Your Honor, just for housekeeping, before we officially start, just want to make the formal request for witness sequestration.
Yes, witnesses shall be sequestered.
Thank you. Thank you. Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever been driving along the highway and you notice somebody speeding past you at a high rate of speed, and maybe they cut you off, maybe they're weaving in and out of traffic? You thought to yourself, you know, I should catch up to them. I should catch up to them and give them peace of my mind. Tell them what I think about their driving. But you don't. You don't because it's dangerous. You don't because maybe your passenger, your spouse, children tell you, cut it out. You don't because you're a civilian. You're not a police officer. On June 23rd, 2021, Dan Dolan was passed on the highway by a speeder. He couldn't let it go. Anger got hold of him. Even though, as an off-duty Pawtucket police officer, in civilian clothing, in a civilian car, he had no more authority than you and me on a highway in West Ranch, 995. He was a civilian, but he followed. He followed that car. And that is why we are here. On June 23rd, 2021, Dominic Vincent, 18 years old, just wanted to get a pizza with his friends. He was going to spend the night with his buddies at his house. They were going to sleep over. And he went to pick them up. Jimmy Greco, 18 years old. Jimmy's brother, who's 17 years old, Joey. They got in the car, and they drove to Walmart at the center of New England, in Coventry, to pick up some supplies. Junk food, groceries for Dominic's mother. And they went back to the car and put the stuff in the trunk. And before they left the parking lot, they ordered a pizza from Wicked Good Pizza in West Greenwich. A meatloaf pizza. And then drove away and got on 95 at exit 7, which is now exit 21. And drove the 3-mile drive, speeding, sped towards exit 6. One exit about 3 miles. And I say sped intentionally. By all indications, Dominic was going or averaging in excess of 100 miles an hour between exit 7 and exit 6. So he's going at a good clip. But as he approached exit 6, which is now exit 18, Nooseneck Hill Road, he exited and slowed. Took the right off the exit and just up the road just a piece. On the right-hand side is Wicked Good Pizza. He rolled his car in. And as he rolled his car in, he directed the front of the car at the pizza place, perpendicular to the pizza place. Right up behind him. Right up behind him. Barrel, a Ford F-350 flatbed pickup truck. It came in quickly, came in behind him, almost coming in contact with his front left bumper and kind of pinned him. The driver of that pickup truck got out in civilian clothing, baseball cap, cargo pants, t-shirt, with a .40 caliber firearm strapped to his hip. He got out of that car hastily. He came around the side with his left hand up, with what was later determined to be a police badge, and his right hand up in the stop. Dominic Vincent in that Audi was not sticking around to figure out what this guy wanted. He had no idea who it was. Never seen that vehicle. Didn't know the driver. As soon as that guy got out of that pickup truck, Dominic was jamming it in reverse and pulling out. Backing up towards Route 3 and moving his car forward. But this man was persistent. After failing to stop the car with a badge and a hand, he took it upon himself to rush over and place his body in front of the boy's car in an attempt to get it to stop. At that point, Dominic had slowed the car to a roll. It was barely moving, if it was moving at all. Idling, maybe. This man got in front of the car, put his hands on the hood in an attempt to get it to stop. Dominic sees the firearm on his hip at this point and wants to get no part. His hands on the hood, his hands on the hood, comes across that hood. And as he makes his way across the hood, he makes his way from the front, up the hood, over to where the driver's side is. Clears the side of the car. Stands on the side of that car. As he comes around the corner, he reaches for that .40 caliber Glock that is on his right hip. And levels it at the car. "You're about to get shot," he yells through the window. Dominic braces for impact and tries to shield himself, almost as an instinct, going towards the center console. Like this. Just as he does that, a .40 caliber slug crashes through that window into Dominic's left arm, hitting his arm bone. It's humorous. Mushrooming as it hit the bone, shattering his left humerus, shattering the bone in half. Dominic has not accelerated while he was in that parking lot, but now he does. And as he does, he pulls back on to Route 3, National Road. But he doesn't get far because the pain, the blood is pooling, and his left arm is completely disabled. His arm won't grip his hand, won't grip the steering wheel. So he makes his way to the right, pulls over on the shoulder. Gets out of the car. He's afraid of getting shot again. The group pulls up behind him. The man in that white truck. Dominic pleads with him for help and asks him if he's going to die. Dominic has no idea that the person he's talking to, the man who created this dangerous situation, who raced into that parking lot, put himself in front of that alley, pulled out his .40 caliber pistol, and fired it through the driver's side window was this defendant, off-duty Pawtucket police officer, Daniel Dolan. Dominic gets taken to the hospital, where he's treated. And this defendant stays on the scene and speaks to the police on the scene, and then he gives a recorded statement as well, and explains his version of what happened. He too says he was driving down I-95 headed south towards exit 6 when he's passed on the left by a car doing in excess of 100 miles an hour. Daniel Dolan, being the ever vigilant police officer, thinks, goodness, this guy must be running from something. He must have committed some type of felony. He must be fleeing a police pursuit. So he looks in his rear view mirror. He looks behind him to see whether or not there's a cruiser chasing. There is no such cruiser. No one's chasing him. So according to Daniel Dolan, this defendant, he maintains his speed. He keeps driving towards exit 6, which is, he says, is his exit. Exit's his normal exit. And according to this defendant, he exits at exit 6 and just happens upon the Audi pulling into Wicked Good Pizza. Just by happenstance. The evidence will show otherwise. But just by happenstance, it happens upon that. And as he pulls in behind it, he says he gets out of the car. He wants to speak, again, according to him, wants to speak to the operator about his driving habits. Just wanted to speak with him and ask him his story. So he tried to stop the car with his badge and commands to stop. When the Audi didn't stop, he then put himself in front of the car. He claims that the car came at him, so much so that he feared for his life and pulled the trigger after drawing his service weapon. Now, hearing that story, you might think that the bullet had struck Dominic Vincent, hit him in the chest, through the windshield, but it came in through the driver's side window. The defendant claimed he was in danger of being struck. Even though the evidence will show he is clearly out of harm's way on the driver's side of that vehicle, shooting point blank at Dolan. But the state will present Dominic, people in that car, also played for you the defendant's statement. One side will be supported by the evidence, witnesses, physical evidence, and one side will be not believed. And while you're listening to that evidence, I'd ask you to think about the state of mind of both the people who are descendants, both of the people who are at the wheels of their vehicles. Think about the defendant's state of mind when he is on the highway and when he exits. And look at his miles per hour when he is coming down Mooseneck Road. And look how he comes into and what he is thinking. Compare that with how Dominic exits, how Dominic pulls in, and what is on Dominic, an 18-year-old boy. What is on his mind when he pulls into Wicked Good Pizza. And I submit to you that what is on his mind is a pizza pie and going out and watching the NBA with his friends. State will present a number of witnesses. We'll start with the boys in that car. Dominic, and he will recount for you what it was like being at the wheel of that car, what he thought, he was thinking when he saw that pickup truck pulling behind him. He sees that operator get out, and how he was not sticking around. He'll describe when he was bracing before he got hit with that slug, and what that slug did to his arm. Hospital visit, doctor visits. That's his dominant arm. He's a lefty, totally immobilized for months, no use of it for months, physical therapy. We'll hear from the Rhode brothers, Jimmy in front of the passenger seat, and Joey in the back. They'll give you their observations from their perspective. Time of this shooting, there was a green Subaru that you'll see on video passing by. State Police Ray Colucci, who was in that green Subaru. They'll be here too. James Linden was driving the car. His daughter Sierra was in the car, as well as Sierra's girlfriend, Katie Reed. All three of them will be here to give their views of what happened. But just as this defendant was firing into that driver's side window, they were passing by. All three saw that firearm come out. Two of them saw it leveled at the window. Katie Reedy had her head stuffed into the seat when the shot was fired. But they'll be there. The state will also present to you West Greenwich Major James Tiernan. Major Tiernan was present for the interview with this defendant. He was on the scene. He'll tell you what he saw and heard on the scene, and he'll recount for you what is in that interview with this defendant. He'll actually play the recording for you while Major Tiernan is on the stand. Just to let you know that statement is inconsistent. Some key portions with the evidence that you'll see. You'll also hear from two detectives with the Rhode Island State Police, both of whom are investigators, who investigated this case, different aspects of this case. One of them, Adam Kennett, looked at the cameras that are on 95, and he did his calculations so that he could determine how fast what Audi was going between those two exits and how fast the truck was going between those two exits. He will also did the same calculations from a Shell station, looking out onto Newsneck Hill Road, just before the entrance to Wicked Pizza. Between the exit 6, and Wicked Pizza. He did those calculations as well, for both the Audi as well as the truck. You'll hear from him. Detective Savovich is an expert in things having to do with automobile collisions and automobile analysis. He will come and talk to you about what he found, having looked at that Audi and taken pictures, and what he found. He found a number of palm prints, handprints on that car, starting in the front and going up towards the driver's side. One of those palm prints came back as a positively identified as Dana Dolan. He also studied the driver's side window. He'll explain to you, probably more than you'll ever know, about how glass, the driver's side window of the car, breaks. And what the lines in it mean, what the cubes in it mean. used his expert analysis to determine that where that slug, because the window is not all in one piece. As Dominic drives out, it leads on Route 3. Portions of that driver's side window fall out onto the pavement of Route 3. But there's enough there for the detective to give his expert opinion as to where that slug entered that vehicle. And if this is the driver's side window, this is the front of the car, this is the front of the window, this is it's called the B pillar, or the post that holds up the roof. That bullet entered down here. 3.5 inches off the sill. 3.5 inches from that edge of the window. Right there. That's where the bullet entered. Providing further proof this defendant was not in the front of the car, was not in harm's way when he pulled the trigger. As I said, this case is about 3 teenage boys who were trying to get pizza. They were speeding to get there. And for that transgression, one of them got shot. Shot by this defendant, an off-duty police officer. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. This is not a case about a police officer. This is not a police officer use of force case. This defendant, who happens to be a Pawtucket police officer, he could have been a plumber, he could have been a carpenter, he could have been a lawyer. He had no more authority in West Greenwich on Route 3 than you have or I have. None. The same. He's a civilian. He's a civilian when he pulls that trigger. A civilian who used deadly force in a situation of his own creation. A civilian who put himself in the front of the boy's car and then claims, once he gets in front of the car, that he is in danger and needs to use lethal force. A civilian who then moved to the side of the car, out of harm's way, and fires a shot. On a defenseless and a bewildered Dominic Vincent, who has no idea why this guy is in front of his car. Nothing about the defendant's actions that they were reasonable. This is what the evidence will show, and this is what the state will prove. At the conclusion of the state's presentation of evidence, Mr. Corrigan will return to you. He will ask you to return a verdict that is consistent with evidence and consistent with the law, as Judge Matos will do. And that verdict is good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Every coin has two sides, just as every case has two sides. My name is Michael Colucci. It is my privilege to represent Officer Daniel Dolan, a member of the Pawtucket Police Department, 10-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Now, I will prove to you that Officer Dolan is not guilty of any criminal activity in this matter. Indeed, I will prove to you that he shot only in self-defense, only as a last resort, and only when the driver of that Audi was purposely driving directly at him, despite an avenue to go in a different direction. And while Dolan was attempting to get out of the way. Now, in order to prove this to you, I'm going to focus on some key points 8 key areas. I'll list them to you in a moment and then discuss them briefly. And then I'll give you a general overview of what we will show the evidence is in this case, the actual evidence. You know, I wrote down, Mr. Guglielmo said a few moments ago, that the evidence will clearly show he was out of harm's way. I will prove to you there will be no such evidence in this case, that it shows just the opposite. Let me mention the 8 points, 8 key areas I'll focus on, and then I'll discuss them briefly to you. Number 1, the Audi's actions in driving at and trying to run over Officer Dolan. Number 2, 2-second window. Number 3, Dolan's walk down the driveway of the parking lot. Number 4, the Audi entry and exit from that parking lot. Number 5, I call line of fire. I'll go over these, I'll already try to remember. Number 6, shell casing. Number 7, the Audi's actions on Route 95. And number 8, Officer Dolan's actions immediately after the incident, shooting. Let me discuss those. Number 1, the actions of the Audi in trying to run down Officer Dolan. The moment that Dolan made the decision to shoot, the decision to shoot takes time to draw, aim, and fire. Cars are moving, he's moving, but when he decided it was necessary to shoot, Mr. Vincent driving that Audi was driving directly at him in an effort to run him down. Several witnesses, aside from Officer Dolan, will confirm that, will so testify. One is the cook that works at the pizza place. He came out just before the event happened and saw the Audi, in his words, speeding up, trying to run him over. Mr. Linden driving the green Subaru. You'll hear his 911 call. The guy tried to run the other guy over. That's his impression at the moment. His rear seat passenger, Catherine Riley, she said that the Audi drove right at the guy, never stopped him. His daughter Sierra, who was a front seat passenger, describes Dolan coming from the front of the vehicle, kind of jumping up in front of it, drawing at the same time. Even Mr. Vincent's buddy, Vincent Grieco, a front seat passenger in the Audi, said that Dominic drove right at Officer Dolan while Dolan was holding his badge up in an effort to get him out of the way. Two-second window. We've already had a taste. There's going to be a lot of photos, video. We're going to get a lot of evidence over the next several days. But the actual window of when the decision was made that it was necessary to shoot was about 2 seconds. 2 seconds. A very tight window. And in that moment, Mr. Vincent had already driven into him, knocked him back a bit. You will see the palm print of Officer Dolan, the one that was identified as his palm print, basically in the center, just right in the center of the hood of that Audi. Gun is in the holster. If his palm print is on the hood, his gun is in his holster. And then Dolan tried to, it's knocked back a bit off balance. He goes backwards and to his right to try and get out of the vehicle's way, and he hears the engine revving up. Mr. Vincent will say he put his foot to the floor, the gas pedal to the floor. He heard the engine revving up, he heard the tires squeal. At that moment, he did not believe he could get out of the way, and he made the decision to draw and shoot, and he aimed through the windshield. But of course, he's moving back and to his right, and the car is moving forward. There's motion here. It's not like us sitting still like that. There's motion, car coming forward, Dolan moving back and to his right. So yes, he aims through the windshield, the bullet ends up going through the driver's window. There's no dispute about that. Point number 3. Dolan's walk down that driveway at the pizza place. I'm going to go through that with you, frame by frame, second by second, from when he gets out of his truck, approaches with his badge out, his other hand up, yelling stop, signaling stop, and he walks, the vehicle starts backing, but Dolan, you will see, walks at a fast pace, but walks, continuing to show the badge, continuing to yell stop. The weapon never leaves the holster. Second by second, you will see this, frame by frame. The weapon never leaves the holster. And you will see that if someone wanted to shoot at that moment at that car, there was plenty of opportunity. But the weapon never left the holster. Officer Dolan will tell you. The person was not a threat to him, and he wasn't a threat to anyone else. No reason to pull that weapon. And you will see that he did it. Number 4, the Audi entry and exit into that lot. Now, they say they were going there to get a pizza, perhaps they were. But when the Audi enters the lot, it doesn't go into a parking space. It drives right across the parking spaces and then starts to turn. And when you watch the video, it appears he's turning not to go into the pizza place, but to get out of the lot. He actually cuts in front of Dolan's truck, which is coming up alongside him at the time. Dolan gets out with the badge, and then when Mr. Vincent backs that vehicle down that driveway lot, he does so in a manner that I can best describe it as almost an upside down question mark or like a hook. Dolan is walking, following the vehicle at a good distance, walking, trying to tell it to stop. But then Mr. Vincent does a move. It's like an 180-degree move backwards. So now he's facing the roadway. But when he did that 180-degree move backwards, Dolan, who had been following the vehicle from behind it, now found himself in front of it because the vehicle turned around. And he still had not had the opportunity at that point, you'll see, to have checked his driver out. Was he intoxicated? This is what's running through his mind. Was he in a medical emergency? Why was he driving the way he did on the highway? So Dolan, now finding himself in front of the vehicle, stood still, not knowing where this car was going to go. A good 10 feet distance between. And he assumes and expects that the driver is going to take off on the highway on Route 3. And instead, eventually did, but before it did, it came right at Dolan when it had no need to. Bumped him the first time, knocked him back a few paces, and as I described a few moments ago, that's when the engine of the vehicle revved up, the tires squealed, and that's when it came at him. That 5th point I'm going to focus on. Line of fire. The Linden vehicle in one fashion or another, that they perceived that they were in the line of fire. The last thing any of them saw was the moment the gun came out, and they all perceived that they were in the line of fire. James Linden, the father of the bunch, was driving. He said when he saw the gun come out, he felt he was in the line of fire, so he sped up so he could get out of there. He even later checked his vehicle moments after when he pulled up into a nearby parking lot, because he thought maybe the bullet, if a bullet, he heard a shot, he didn't see it, maybe the bullet hit his car. His passenger in the rear seat, she ducked because she felt she was in the line of fire. His daughter in the front seat. She'll say a couple of different things, but at one point she says she saw that Dolan was aiming through the window and thought that if the bullet went through the alley, it would come into their car. She felt she was in the line of fire. Now, you really, at that point in this case, need to, and you'll see photos, you'll see video, pay close attention to the directions and the whereabouts of the vehicles at that moment. The Linden vehicle was traveling north on Route 3, the same direction that the Audi would eventually leave that parking lot. So they were facing in the same direction. The Linden vehicle was approaching from, maybe 100 feet or so south of the parking lot. And he's approaching the vehicle, approaching the parking lot to the pizza. The pizza place is on their right. It's facing north, so the pizza place is east in the directional model. Okay? And you will see that at that moment in time, there is only one place that Dolan could have been for anyone in the Linden vehicle to be in the line of fire, and it is just as Dolan will tell you that he was at that front corner of the vehicle. If he was at the side, again, look at the photos, look at the video when we get to this point. If he was at the side pointing into the driver's window, his back would be facing the Linden vehicle. That's not what the evidence is going to be here. Undisputed. They're going to see it. He would have been facing the pizza place. He would have been facing the driver. His back would have been facing the Linden vehicle. Yet every person in the Linden vehicle at the moment, what they actually perceived was that they were in the line of fire. Again, Seattle Linden will also say, well, I saw him at the side of the vehicle. Look, the vehicle was always going forward, the Audi. Dolan was always moving when he was trying to get out of its path. That vehicle, unless it stopped and it didn't, was always going to pass Dolan on one side or the other, so it was always going to pass him on its passenger side, on its rear side, and eventually Dolan would be left behind as the vehicle traveled north. So sure, witnesses could think they see something. You're going to see this, that they were all in Kansas State. This was an unusual event for someone passing by. You're going to see this. All right. Point number 6, the shell casing. Investigators found that shell casing somewhat north of the parking lot, about 40 feet or so from a red fire hydrant. You can see red fire hydrants at the bottom of the pizza place parking lot. And it was in the Route 3 at that point. There was 2 lanes going north, 2 lanes going south. It was near that double yellow line, somewhat forward ahead of the parking lot. Now, none of the investigators were going to suggest that that's where the shooting took place. There's a camera view of that would have been on film. But the investigators will tell you that casing had been run over, appeared to have been run over by other vehicles traveling north on Route 3 before any police could get there and close the lanes down. And it most likely it knocked that casing forward. You'll hear that. know somebody probably said he knows something about, but for those who don't, you're gonna learn that that type of weapon that Dolan had is a right-handed shooter, it's a right-handed weapon. The shell casing, the part of the bullet that's left behind in the gun, upon firing, that casing ejects out at a 90-degree angle to the gun. So, the right-handed shooter, it would eject out to you if I'm facing this way. Dolan will say he's at the front of the vehicle when he makes the decision to shoot. He's facing south. The bullet, the casing ejects to his right side to that, which would be into the travel lanes. Into the travel lanes where they would be run over by other vehicles. You will see that if he was facing the driver, facing pizza place, that casing would have ejected to his right, would have ejected into the parking lot, or at best into the car. All right, point number 7. The actions of the Audi A95. As Officer Dolan completed his tour of duty that day, he's driving home. He feels the shape. And you'll see the truck, it's a pretty big truck. He feels his truck shake as a black vehicle screams by it. He felt at the moment, had we been going over 100 miles an hour. The state police investigated that and confirmed that at that location, that's exit 6A, it was traveling at 126 miles an hour. 126 miles per hour. And Dolan observed it for the brief moments that he could. Look, he's helpless with this. He's got this truck. He had hoped to try and get a plate. There was no way he could catch up with this vehicle in his truck. But he observed it. He traveled around at least 2 sets of vehicles that had passed. Not as you normally pass vehicles. He saw them go into the breakdown lane, pass those sets of vehicles, weave back out into traffic, and then move past another set of vehicles using the breakdown lane. Okay? But there was nothing he could do at the moment. He had no information to report over the phone to the state police or anybody else. So he took his normal exit 6, which is the next one after 6A. Dolan took his normal exit to get home, and lo and behold, as he gets to Route 3, there's the black Audi, the same one. So now he speeds up to do what he couldn't do on 95, at least get a plate. Follow the vehicle if it doesn't stop anywhere. If it stops somewhere, he can talk to the operator. Is there a medical emergency here? Is this person intoxicated? Or is it just a bunch of kids fooling around? He feels compelled. He's going to tell you. He could have ignored it, but it pulls into a lot, immediately pulls into the pizza place. And Dolan's going to tell you, now he has a choice. Do I just ignore it and go home? And perhaps read in papers tomorrow? Had a black Audi killed someone. A sworn police officer, a United States Marine, he can't. He feels obligated to at least talk to them and check it out. And that's what he does. He pulls in to check them and check it out. We talk about, Guglielmo mentioned the defendant's state of mind. I'm going to point you to evidence and you're going to see exactly what his state of mind was. Point number 8, his actions right after the incident. After he shot, Dolan continued down the road and ends up pulling over within the next 10 seconds. Still in sight of Dolan. Dolan sees it, gets in his vehicle, and heads in that direction. Here's what Dolan doesn't do. He doesn't flee. He doesn't hide. He calls 911. He identifies himself. Daniel Dolan, off-duty police officer. I just shot someone. Where are you? He gives the details. Tells him very briefly what happened. Tells him where to come to find him. This is what you're going to see the state of mind of. He gets out. He renders first aid to Mr. Vincent, who's understandably quite upset, anxious at the moment. Pacing around, he tells him, sit down, relax, be calm. He makes a makeshift, he gets a sweatshirt out of his truck and makes a makeshift tourniquet to help stop any bleeding that's going on. And then he stays there, directs police and fire to where he is. He stays there and assists them and cooperates with them when they arrive. He speaks to Major Cannon, you heard his name. He does a walkthrough with all the officers to explain how it happened. And he even sits down and gives a complete statement. That's his actions after the shooting. That's his state of mind. You'll see it and hear it yourself. So those are the quick 8 points. Now just let me fill in the rest of the evidence you're going to hear, what we're going to prove. June 23, 21. Dolan was the school resource officer at one of the Pawtucket Middle Schools that day. It was the last day of school. He had been born and raised in Pawtucket, went through the school system. And he became a school resource officer for that year. That's why he's going to explain he had that truck. That's a truck he usually used around for home projects, but he had that truck because one of the students had earned himself a bicycle. And they needed a truck to go pick it up. And then the year, one of the students had earned good grades and hard work, so they promised him a bicycle. That's why he had that truck. After school was done, there was, it just so happens that Dolan High School was being torn down. And they had an event for any alumni to come and kind of go like the last walkthrough. Live old memories of the school. And he worked the detail there for 4 hours. All that took place. Then he was done for the day, and he changed, not completely into civilian clothes. He kept his uniform pants on, he kept his badge on, which he held. Sounds good, right here. Kept his firearm on, of course. He kept his uniform pants on. He had a white t-shirt that he wore under his uniform shirt. Had the Pawtucket Police insignia on it, okay? And it had a reference to one of its recently passed lieutenants in memory of Mr. P. So, that's how he was dressed. And then he takes his normal route home to Coventry down 95 before Route 3. And he sees what I just described to you a few moments ago, the hourly action on 95. Okay. And then he sees it pull off the exit. He doesn't see it pull off the exit. At that point, that Audi is almost 20 seconds ahead of him. He happens to see it when he get off the exit. And then, as I described earlier, the Audi exits the lot, Dolan exits the lot, and you'll hear Mr. Vincent and the boys say, Dolan cut us off in the lot. They'll say, we had no idea who he was. But you'll see the actual video. I'll show it to you. I'll show you the still photos. It was actually Mr. Vincent who cut in front of Dolan. And as you've been told, they'll claim they had no idea who this was. And I can't see how they would. No one's going to say they knew each other. That's not going to be this case. What they knew, and I'm going to prove to you, those boys knew it had something to do with the highway. Even though they'll tell you otherwise. One of the boys will say, when they got off the exit, they were looking back. He was looking back to see if someone got off the highway. You'll hear that on his own mouth. Dominic will tell you they just pulled into that lot, blasting music, having fun. And he'll say he immediately knew the white Ford, Mr. Dolan, had some, there was going to be be some issue. You have to ask yourself, how can you know that? What you'll see in the video is just a truck pulling in, yes, somewhat fast into the parking lot. All they knew he was getting a pizza as well. So, you'll see that you will see with your own eyes and ears, and not being truthful about that. And then, as I described before, Dolan gets out, displays his badge. You know, I've never seen the gun, but Dolan's behind the truck. Gun is not visible to them. The helmet is all right back in now. Nothing to do with the gun. Then, as I say, Dolan walks down, follows him, ends up in front of the vehicle, in the crib with Guglielmo control after that. So as I said, members of the jury, cases like coins have heads and a tail. Was it heads or was it tails? I'm going to prove to you. It was tails. Dolan was tails in this case. Stayed his heads. I'm going to prove to you. He shot only in self-defense. And on that point, it's when he made the decision that it was necessary to shoot. He was in grave danger. And you will learn that officers like Dolan, any officer in the state, is trained. He may have been off duty, but he still had a professional training that he had learned. Officers are trained to stop the threat. They are not trained to shoot at vehicles, shoot at tires, shoot up in the air, discharge a bullet anywhere. They're trained to shoot at the threat. And when he was faced with that mortal danger, his training took over, as it was designed to do. He was in front of the vehicle at the moment he decided to shoot. But again, 2-second window. Take some time for the brain to tell your arm to get that vehicle, to get that weapon, pull it out of its holster, and when it came out, he was still in the direct path of that vehicle, still in the line of danger, trying to get out of the way. And he will tell you at best if he could hit his target, he could stop the threat, because usually a driver who's hit stops driving. And that instead of being dragged down the road for a mile or two, maybe he'd only be dragged for several feet with a better chance of survival. But in his mind, he believed he was in immediate, imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to himself. And he shot in self-defense only as a last resort, only as a last option. So I'll come back to you at the end of this case. And I'm going to ask you to decide tails and find it out with me. Members of the jury, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your attention.
Dave, we call their first witness.
State calls Dominic Vincent.